Right now, millions of people are online demanding a massive technological leap forward, like advanced sci-fi medical technology that can heal the human body instantly. But those exact same online spaces are filled with outrage over the rapid expansion of physical data centers and energy grids. Here's the hard reality, guys. You simply can't have one without the other. The more automated, advanced, and miraculous we want our future technology to be, the more concrete, steel, and power we have to employ on the ground. Today we're breaking down the massive disconnect between the future people say they want and the physical infrastructure required to actually build it. My name is Spirit, and as a practicing pharmacist for over 30 years, my life consisted of being part of the medical matrix in many various settings, including research institutes and government regulation and criminal investigations. On this and my new channel, I break down the complex subjects of biology, metabolism, physics, and the clues behind today's often divergent headlines. This video explores the ultimate paradox of the modern tech boom and the programmed resistance to it. Everybody wants the miraculous technology of off-world beings, but they are actively fighting the literal factories that will build it. Sadly, this resistance is not organic. It's spawned by content creators spreading fear porn, either deliberately or inadvertently. The fact is very simple. The more sophisticated the technology, the heavier the infrastructure will be. This video will explore this dichotomy and the validity of the concerns. First, the Clean Living Lab is about to launch. It will focus on identifying and eliminating the toxins that compromise our health in a simple and informed way. So please subscribe to the new channel now, and don't forget to ring the bell to receive notice of the premiere release, which is planned for some time this week. The link to the Clean Living Lab is in the description and the pinned comment of this video, so be sure to hit that link to start combating this well-documented adverse health effects of consuming mass quantities of toxins. Now let's get into these data centers and what is accurate and what isn't. You've likely noticed the abundance of narratives claiming to expose the massive disconnect between the future that people crave and the trillions of dollars of concrete, steel, and electricity required to actually manifest it. A March 2026 Gallup poll reported that 71% of Americans oppose local construction of data centers, and more people would rather live near a nuclear plant than a data center. I pulled a couple of the scripts that are circulating online, and they are valid but overinflated or misplaced concerns. Georgia Power is taking people's property by eminent domain for data centers. This may or may not be true, and it could be by corrupt authorities for corrupt tech controllers. We need to always follow the buck, and that's often not readily apparent. Then there is one with a Florida data center starting up with black smoke using as much power as required to power a city. This is true of some but not all data centers, and the result of a cold startup that happens every single day when they start the backup generators. The newer facilities use Tier 4 diesel generators, which cuts down on the harmful nitrogen oxides by 88%. And also cuts down on the particle matter by 85%. So while these claims are factually correct, they're misleading because they've made a lot of advancements since these videos. Then there are massive AI data centers in Texas, and Abilene is in the middle of a huge AI data center boom with OpenAI, Oracle, Crusoe, Microsoft, and other big tech giants all wanting their piece of the pie, and I don't doubt that one bit. These facilities use 8 million gallons of water for their initial fill, for their cooling systems. However, one ex-post that I saw said that a new project in Utah is in a completely uninhabited area. It bought and repurposed the water that was already in use, and it's bringing in its own power, so it won't cost citizens anything. The Babylon Bee also reported that about 90% of databases in use today are storing your thousands of photos, which likely include your family members, your pets, and what you ate last night for dinner. And nobody has been concerned about that because it's never been brought to their attention before. People want their wireless doorbells and their nature cams. They want those smart lights and smart TVs, their GPS, Alexa, Siri, all that navigation stuff, diagnostics and maintenance and safety features in their cars. It's going to get bigger and bigger, guys, because people use them. To understand this disconnect, we have to look at the biggest marketing illusion of the 21st century. Can you guess what it is? The cloud, the invisible cloud. But when we send a text, stream a video, or save a photo, we're told it all lives in the cloud. It sounds harmless enough, doesn't it? And completely detached from our physical world. But the cloud isn't an imaginary space of air. The cloud is a multi-acre concrete fortress packed with millions of silicon chips, miles of fiber optic cabling, and industrial cooling systems running 24 hours a day. Nobody had a problem with that until now. So that's why I have to consider this a manipulated narrative with all of this recent upheaval and concern about databases. A simple internet search takes a fraction of a second and a tiny burst of processing power, but when you talk about next generation technology like AI medical diagnostics, molecular modeling, or advanced frequency calculations, the computational math explodes exponentially. Advanced, automated technology requires millions of complex calculations per second per person. Multiply that by 80 million people clamoring for the next level repair of their degrading bodies. That data can't materialize out of thin air. It has to be processed, calculated, and cooled inside a physical building. The magical technologies that everyone is waiting for store a lot of data, and they demand an unprecedented amount of localized processing power. If we genuinely want a society driven by next-generation computing, we have to mature past the myth that technology can exist without an infrastructure. The dream of an advanced tomorrow isn't going to make data centers go away. It's going to make them multiply across the world. The fundamental flaw in the alarmist perspectives being circulated right now is the assumption that technology stands still while our consumption grows, and this simply isn't true. We must expand our thinking. If you listen to the modern narratives surrounding data centers, it sounds like an absolute apocalypse, doesn't it? The headlines are filled with what can only be described as infrastructure fear porn, claiming that massive computing hubs are black holes that will completely drain our local rivers, deplete our drinking water, and collapse our municipal power grids. While it's a valid concern that traditional data centers did pull millions of gallons of water for evaporating, cooling, and they did strain local electrical substations, tomorrow does not equal yesterday. This doom loop narrative completely ignores a fundamental rule of human progress that technology never evolves in a vacuum. The alarmists assume we are trying to build a sci-fi future using 1990s plumbing. The reality is that the exact same engineering leaps driving us towards advanced technology are simultaneously revolutionizing the infrastructure beneath it. We are hitting a technological turning point where data centers are shifting from resource drains into highly efficient, closed-loop ecosystems. Let's look at the water consumption, for example. The old world relied on massive evaporative cooling towers that lost millions of gallons to evaporation. Today, the industry is rapidly transitioning to advanced liquid-to-chip cooling and immersion systems, which submerge the components in specialized fluids that don't evaporate, mitigating the water consumption concerns. Even more revolutionary is that there's emerging systems that now utilize the immense waste heat that's generated by these servers to thermally purify brackish water or harvest moisture directly from the atmosphere. This effectively turns next-generation data centers into water-positive facilities that generate more clean water for communities than they actually consume. The same transformation is happening on the power grid. Tech giants aren't just plugging these giant structures into existing fragile city grids and hoping for the best. This massive demand for localized computing power is single-handedly funding and accelerating the development of independent, next-generation energy sources and localized microgrids. These clean, hyperdense power sources are being developed in tandem with the advanced technologies being developed. But emerging technology isn't the only reason that such expansion of data centers is necessary. One might say, well, why don't we just build one massive data center in some remote location rather than hundreds of cities across the world? For decades, the mainstream technological infrastructure has trended towards a monopoly that funnels global communication, financial records, and processing power into a handful of massive, consolidated data centers. You may not realize it, but such centralization is the danger of the historic system. When data is centralized under one entity, or a handful of them, it creates a single point of failure, and more importantly, a single point of absolute control and manipulation. It creates a system where a contrived narrative can be spread globally and access to your digital world can be switched off with a single keystroke. Is it starting to make sense yet? Let's elaborate. The vulnerability of this outdated model is exactly why the proliferation of new distributed data center networks is so critical. True security and true independence demands decentralization. The expansion that we're witnessing isn't about building a bigger monopoly, it's about building a massive distributed shield against that exact kind of centralized control. By distributing processing power across a vast network of independent facilities, we break the monopoly. We ensure that no single corporate entity, regulatory body, or proclaimed authority can dominate the flow of tomorrow's technology or information. I'm big on analogies, as many of you know, so let me use one here for you. If a town relies on a single mega grocery corporation for 100% of its food, that corporation dictates prices, controls supply, and can choose who gets to eat. If there are multiple grocery stores or dozens of backyard gardens, no single entity can starve the community or manipulate food prices. Of course, prices rely on supply also, as we're seeing. But imagine if the suppliers only had one distributor. The potential for corruption and price fixing increases dramatically. Likewise, if your home were on fire, wouldn't you want to have water hydrants all over town rather than one big water source passing buckets of water down a long line of people? Because if somebody drops a bucket, you're not screwed then. Because the water distribution is decentralized, so you have options. Nobody could decide to shunt all the water away from homes to protect, say, smelt fish in the ocean. It's important to remember this quote by me. Decentralization is critical to prevent compartmentalization, which is a technique used to keep everybody ignorant of how the entire scheme works. I'm going to repeat that one more time because it's applicable to governance in general. Decentralization is critical to prevent compartmentalization, which is a technique used to keep everybody ignorant of how the entire scheme works. So basically, that means when we have these monopolies of information, it breeds corruption, and the redistribution of that information is the cleansing. For major fraud to succeed, the perpetrators rely on keeping people in the dark. In forensics, this is known as creating information silos, and it ensures that honest people accidentally help commit the fraud because they only see their tiny, authorized slice of the puzzle. They lack the context to notice that something is wrong. So to me, this alarmism about these data centers is choosing a path in the evolution of mankind. Either you believe that we are moving into a technologically advanced world and you understand the infrastructure that it requires, or you shut off your phone, get off your computer, and go read a book because those data centers don't live unless we create the data. Please don't forget to like, subscribe to both channels, and tell me what you think. If you know someone who might benefit from this kind of analysis of today's and tomorrow's world, then please share it so we can all understand how we got to this point and where we're going tomorrow. Till next time, I love you guys. Love each other, and take care.